Apple lost roughly $475 billion in market value in a single Friday session. Its worst intraday drop since March 2020. On a day it reported the best June quarter for iPhone revenue in company history. $54.25 billion of phones, up almost 22%, and the market still took nearly $500 billion off the company. The reason isn't the phone, isn't China, isn't tariffs. It's a component that costs a few dollars and never shows up on a spec sheet. Friday morning, 2 of the 5 biggest companies on Earth reported into the same market and went opposite ways. Apple fell almost 10%. Amazon rose about 10.5%. Both beat revenue expectations. Both sell into the AI boom. And both were reacting to the exact same line item buried inside their cost structures. When 2 companies that size split that hard over one input, the input is the story, not the company's. The input isn't a graphics processor. It's ordinary memory, DRAM and NAND flash, the commodity chips that have been the least glamorous part of computing for 30 years. Apple's gross margin compressed 280 basis points across 2 quarters, and memory costs accounted for more than 100% of that decline. Read that again. Everything else Apple did was margin positive. Memory alone ate the gains, and then some. Here's the scale of it. Conventional DRAM contract prices rose 90 to 95% quarter over quarter heading into 2026, then roughly 60% again in the second quarter. TrendForce projects another 13 to 18% this quarter. And there's nowhere else to shop. 3 suppliers make the world's DRAM. 2 Korean firms control something on the order of 78% of high-bandwidth memory. That's not a market. That's a queue. For 3 years the accepted map of this industry was simple. Compute was scarce, Nvidia sold the compute, so Nvidia set the terms. The instinct is right. In any supply chain, pricing power sits wherever the scarcest input sits. The mistake was assuming the scarcest input stays put. It doesn't. You can add logic chip capacity faster than you can conjure memory capacity, because memory suppliers spent a decade being punished by the market for building too much. So look at what Amazon actually reported. Second quarter revenue of $200.6 billion, against expectations near $196.5. Operating income of $27.5 billion. And the number that moved the stock. Amazon Web Services grew 36.7% to $42.2 billion, its fastest growth in 18 quarters, sitting on a backlog of $496 billion in signed commitments. Then came the line most of the coverage skipped. Amazon raised its 2026 capital spending from $200 billion to roughly $220 billion. $20 billion more, and not for more data centers. Management pointed at higher memory costs. Same build-out, 10% more money. That is not a growth investment. That's a price increase, and Amazon absorbed it without blinking. And the market cheered anyway. Why? Because AWS revenue is growing faster than the cost of building AWS. 37% growth against 10% cost inflation is a business that still works. Apple has no such lever. It sells a fixed-price object to a consumer who never agreed to fund a memory shortage. Same shock, 2 completely different balance sheets. And that's where this gets uncomfortable for everyone else. Cloud providers write multi-year contracts and reprice. Device makers just eat it. Apple can't send a customer a revised invoice 3 months after they walked out of the store. The price on the box is the price, and the memory inside that box costs whatever it costs on the day the thing gets built. So Apple beat on revenue, beat on profit, and got sold off anyway. The market wasn't grading that quarter. It was grading the next 4. You can measure that confusion precisely. After the call, Bank of America kept a buy rating with a $380 target. Barclays cut to $245. A 55% spread between the high and the low, on the most heavily covered stock on the planet. Nobody's arguing about how many iPhones sell. They're arguing about how long memory stays this expensive. And honestly, nobody knows. Flip to the software side, because OpenAI spent the same stretch of days doing the opposite of raising prices. It cut GPT 5.6 Luna by 80%, 20 cents per million input tokens down from $1, and $1.20 on output, down from 6. Terra came down 20%, to $2 in and 12 out. The flagship Soul didn't move at all, $5 in 30 out. Cutting 80% off your cheap tier, while every physical input in your stack is inflating isn't a discount. It's a defensive move. OpenAI also handed roughly 100,000 scientists, mathematicians and engineers free access to its frontier models through 2027. You give away the bottom of your product line when you're worried about who's standing underneath it. And somebody was standing underneath it. On Friday, DeepSeek took V4 Flash out of preview. 14 cents per million input tokens, 28 cents out. Under the floor OpenAI had just set. Same 284 billion parameter architecture as the preview. No new silicon. The gains came purely from redoing the post-training. Terminal bench jumped from 61.8 to 82.7. The deep SWE coding score went from 7.3 to 54.4. Same hardware, roughly 7 times the score. That's the part that should worry anyone long the hardware trade. If a lab can multiply agentic performance 7-fold by changing its training method instead of buying more memory, the price floor for intelligence gets set by whoever needs the least equipment, not by whoever bought the most. Scarcity only confers power, while the scarce thing is genuinely required. Here's where it gets genuinely strange though. At 8 o'clock Friday evening Eastern, midnight Greenwich, a deadline expired in Washington, and almost nobody noticed. Executive Order 14409, signed in June, required 3 deliverables by August 1st. A classified benchmarking process from the NSA, CISA and NIST, a voluntary disclosure framework for frontier models running through Treasury, and a federal cyber workforce plan from the Office of Personnel Management. 3 agencies, 3 documents, 1 hard date. None of it appeared. No Federal Register notice. No NIST or CISA publication. No statement from the White House Science Office. The TRAINS program, the effort to standardize jailbreak scoring across OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Microsoft and xAI, has no public status at all. Every frontier lab in America is now allocating compute and setting release dates against a rulebook that was legally due and does not exist. So put the map back together. The binding constraint moved from logic chips to memory. Pricing power moved with it, into the hands of 3 suppliers most people can't name. Companies that can reprice, the clouds, got rewarded. Companies that can't, the device makers, got punished. And the model layer responded by cutting prices toward zero, while the cheapest credible model on the board turned out to be the one that needed the least hardware to get there. The next data point is already on the calendar. Nvidia's quarter closed on July 26th. And it reports on August 26th. Everyone will stare at the revenue line. The line that actually matters is gross margin, because that's where a memory shortage shows up first for a company that has to buy high bandwidth memory before it can sell anything at all. Demand was never the open question. Cost of goods is. One sentence from the Apple call never made the coverage. 100-year flood on memory pricing with exponential increases. That's how Apple's outgoing chief executive described it. On a day the company posted records and got sold off anyway. Someone on the way out has no reason left to spin. That's the tell. Not a demand problem. Not a bubble popping. A supply problem in the least fashionable component in the box. Quietly deciding who keeps their margins while everybody stares at the GPUs. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this, smash that like button. See you in the next video.